The grand ballroom buzzed with excitement as elegantly dressed guests mingled under sparkling chandeliers. Servers glided through the crowd, offering trays of perfectly crafted hors d'oeuvres, while soft classical music played in the background. This was no ordinary gathering. It was a state dinner, one of the most prestigious events of the year, attended by dignitaries, celebrities, and influential figures from across the country. At the center of it all stood Chef Antoine Duval, a culinary genius whose name had become synonymous with excellence. Chef Duval wasn't just any chef. He was an artist who treated every dish like a masterpiece. For weeks, he had poured his heart into designing the menu for this evening. Each course told a story of history, culture, and innovation. From the delicate amuse-bouche to the rich, decadent dessert, every detail had been carefully considered. He wanted tonight to be unforgettable, not just for its flavors, but also for its meaning. Among the esteemed guests was Karoline Leavitt, a rising star in the political world. Known for her sharp wit and bold ideas, she commanded attention wherever she went. Her presence at the dinner added a layer of intrigue, as everyone wondered how she would navigate such a formal setting. Cameras flashed as she arrived, her confident smile lighting up the room. Reporters eagerly documented her every move, knowing that anything she said or did could make headlines. What made this night particularly special was the anticipation surrounding Chef Duval's centerpiece dish, a duck confit recipe passed down through generations, reimagined with modern techniques. It was more than food. It was a tribute to tradition and creativity. Guests whispered about it as they took their seats, eager to see if the legendary chef could live up to his reputation. Behind the scenes, however, there was tension brewing. Chef Duval's team worked tirelessly to ensure everything ran smoothly, aware that even the smallest mistake could ruin the evening. The pressure was immense, especially given the high-profile nature of the attendees. Every plate had to be flawless, every flavor balanced. As the clock ticked closer to the main event, Chef Duval paced the kitchen, inspecting each station and giving final instructions. His dedication was unmatched, but so was his temper when things didn't go according to plan. Meanwhile, Karoline Leavitt settled into her seat, chatting casually with those around her. She seemed relaxed yet observant, taking note of the atmosphere and the people. Little did anyone know, she had plans of her own for the evening, plans that would soon put her on a collision course with the passionate chef. The stage was set for a dramatic showdown, though no one could have predicted what was about to unfold. As the evening progressed, the air of anticipation grew thicker. Guests sipped champagne and exchanged polite conversation, unaware of the brewing storm behind the scenes. In a quiet corner of the venue, Karoline Leavitt met briefly with the event coordinator to discuss her expectations for the meal. She was known for her strong opinions, and tonight was no exception. With a calm but firm tone, she explained that she wanted the centerpiece dish altered to suit her vegan lifestyle. Karoline's reasoning wasn't entirely selfish. She argued that as a public figure, her choices carried weight, especially among younger audiences who admired her commitment to progressive values. A plant-based alternative, she believed, would send a powerful message about sustainability and health. Her team had even prepared a list of potential substitutions, hoping to make the transition seamless. However, what started as a simple request quickly escalated into something more contentious. When the demand reached Chef Antoine Duval, it landed like a thunderclap. Known for his fiery passion and unyielding standards, he listened intently as the coordinator relayed Karoline's wishes. His expression darkened with each word. To him, this wasn't just about changing a dish. It felt like an attack on his artistry. The duck confit was the heart of the menu, a symbol of heritage and craftsmanship. Altering it would undermine everything he had worked so hard to create. No, Chef Duval said firmly, cutting off the coordinator mid-sentence. Absolutely not. His voice was low but carried an edge that left no room for negotiation. This is not some fast food joint where we can swap ingredients on a whim. Every element of this menu has been thoughtfully designed. If she wants something else, she can bring her own chef. The coordinator hesitated, clearly uneasy. Chef, I understand your perspective, but She's the guest of honor. People are watching. This could reflect poorly on the event. Chef Duval's eyes narrowed. Then let them watch me stand by my principles. I won't compromise my work for anyone, not even her. Word of the refusal spread quickly through the kitchen staff. Some nodded in agreement, admiring their boss's determination to protect his vision. Others exchanged nervous glances, worried about the potential fallout. After all, Karoline Leavitt wasn't just any guest. She was a force to be reckoned with, someone whose words could sway public opinion in an instant. Crossing her seemed risky, if not outright reckless. Meanwhile, Karoline received the news of the chef's refusal through her assistant. At first, she appeared unfazed, sipping her drink and scanning the room. But as the reality of the situation sank in, her jaw tightened. She hadn't expected resistance, least of all from someone whose job was to cater to guests' needs. To her, this wasn't about food, it was about respect. And she didn't take kindly to being dismissed. Her team scrambled to offer solutions, suggesting ways to address the issue without escalating further. But Karoline shook her head. No, she said firmly. He doesn't get to dictate my choices. If he thinks this is about convenience, he's mistaken. This is about doing what's right, for the planet, for my supporters, and for future generations. The tension simmered beneath the surface, invisible to the oblivious guests enjoying their appetizers. Yet, everyone involved knew the confrontation was far from over. Chef Duval remained steadfast in his decision while Karoline bristled at what she saw as arrogance. Both were determined to defend their positions, setting the stage for a clash that neither side seemed willing to back down from. The elegant ballroom, once filled with harmony, now carried an undercurrent of unease, a prelude to the drama that was about to unfold. The kitchen was a flurry of activity, but beneath the surface of sizzling pans and clinking utensils, an invisible tension gripped the staff. Chef Antoine Duval's refusal to alter the centerpiece dish had sent ripples through the team. Each member caught between admiration for their boss's principles and anxiety over the potential consequences. Whispers filled the air as servers double-checked orders and line cooks plated dishes with precision. Everyone knew the stakes were high. This wasn't just any dinner. It was a state event where reputations could be made or broken. Karoline Leavitt's team, stationed nearby in a private lounge, buzzed with frustration. Her assistant paced back and forth, clutching a tablet while relaying updates to her social media strategist. Karoline herself sat at a small table, scrolling through her phone with a steely focus. Though she appeared composed on the outside, her sharp exhale gave away her simmering irritation. She hadn't expected this kind of resistance, especially not from someone whose job was to ensure every guest felt valued. To her, Chef Duval's refusal wasn't just about the food. It felt personal, like a challenge to her authority. She's going to post something, one of her aides muttered nervously. If she does, it'll blow up. Let her. Another replied quietly. This is her way of handling things, but we need to think 2 steps ahead. What happens if this turns into a public feud? The conversation stopped abruptly when Karoline stood up, slipping her phone into her clutch. Enough, she said firmly. I'm here to enjoy the evening, not waste time arguing with someone who doesn't understand the bigger picture. Let him have his moment. We'll handle this my way. Back in the kitchen, Chef Duval remained a towering presence, overseeing every detail with hawk-like intensity. His sous chef approached cautiously, holding a tray of garnishes. Chef? He began hesitantly. Are you sure about this? You know how much influence she has? One tweet and... I don't care. Chef Duval interrupted, his voice low but unwavering. Influence doesn't give anyone the right to dictate how I run my kitchen. If she wants to make noise, let her. At least people will know where I stand. Despite his outward confidence, there was a flicker of unease in his eyes. He understood the risks. He'd seen chefs lose sponsorships, bookings, even entire careers after crossing powerful figures. Yet something deeper drove him. A fierce pride in his craft and a belief that compromise would cheapen everything he'd worked for. For Chef Duval, cooking wasn't just a job. It was a form of self-expression. And no one, not even Karoline Leavitt, was going to take that away from him. As the first course was served, the atmosphere in the ballroom shifted subtly. Guests marveled at the presentation of the appetizers, oblivious to the brewing storm behind the scenes. Waitstaff moved gracefully between tables, their smiles masking the tension they carried. A few servers exchanged nervous glances, whispering about the rumors swirling around the kitchen. Was it true that Chef Duval had outright refused the guest of honor? Would Karoline retaliate? Meanwhile, Karoline took her seat at the head table, flanked by dignitaries and journalists eager to capture her reactions. As cameras flashed and conversations swirled, she leaned back slightly, her expression unreadable. She picked up her fork, sampled the appetizer, and nodded politely, a gesture that seemed calculated rather than genuine. Her mind, however, was elsewhere, already strategizing her next move. Unbeknownst to either side, their standoff was about to spill into the public eye. In the age of social media, nothing stayed hidden for long. As the second course was cleared and preparations began, for the main event, the question lingered in the air: who would blink first? The elegant facade of the evening masked a growing divide, one that threatened to overshadow the very celebration it was meant to honor. The ballroom hummed with anticipation as the main course approached. Servers lined up like soldiers, each carrying a plate adorned with Chef Antoine Duval's masterpiece, the duck confit. The dish was a visual marvel, its golden skin glistening under the soft glow of chandeliers, surrounded by vibrant garnishes that looked almost too beautiful to eat. Guests craned their necks, eager to catch a glimpse of the culinary highlight everyone had been talking about. But behind the scenes, emotions were running high, and the tension between Karoline Leavitt and Chef Duval was about to boil over. Karoline sat at her table, scrolling through her phone while pretending to listen to a nearby diplomat recount a story about international trade agreements. Her fingers hovered over the screen as she drafted a post, something subtle but pointed enough to make people curious. Finally, she tapped send, and within seconds the cryptic message appeared online. When tradition trumps progress, we must ask ourselves, who are we really serving? Her followers erupted. Comments poured in, speculating about what or who she might be referring to. Some praised her for standing up for innovation and sustainability, while others accused her of grandstanding. Back in the kitchen, someone showed Chef Duval the tweet. His face flushed red as he read it, his jaw tightening with every word. To him, this wasn't just criticism. It felt like an attack on everything he stood for. "This is unbelievable," he muttered under his breath, slamming a ladle onto the counter. "Does she think I'm some amateur who can't handle feedback? Fine. Let's settle this right now." Before anyone could stop him, Chef Duval grabbed a clean towel, straightened his chef's coat, and marched out of the kitchen. This was unprecedented. He never left the safety of his domain during such events. But tonight was different. Tonight, he was determined to confront the situation head-on. As the main course was served, all eyes turned toward the entrance of the dining hall. There stood Chef Duval, tall and imposing, his presence commanding immediate attention. Cameras flashed wildly as guests realized what was happening. Whispers rippled through the room. Why was the chef here? What was going on? Chef Duval strode confidently toward Karoline's table, stopping just short of where she sat. For a moment there was silence, an electric pause that seemed to stretch endlessly. Then, in a calm but firm voice, he began to speak. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, addressing the entire room, "tonight's centerpiece dish represents more than just flavor. It tells a story of heritage, culture, and respect for ingredients. We've worked tirelessly to honor these traditions while bringing something unique to your plates." He paused, turning his gaze directly to Karoline. "Madame Leavitt, I respect your commitment to your values. However, my role here is to provide an authentic experience, not to cater to personal preferences at the expense of artistic integrity. If you'd prefer something else, perhaps next time you can bring your own chef." The room fell silent, save for the faint clinking of silverware in the distance. Karoline blinked, caught off guard by the boldness of his words. Her cheeks reddened slightly, but she quickly masked her surprise with a polite smile. She nodded once, acknowledging his statement without saying a word. Around them, guests exchanged wide-eyed glances, unsure whether to applaud or gasp. For a moment, it seemed as though the world had stopped spinning. Chef Duval's declaration hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Some admired his courage, others thought he had gone too far. But one thing was certain, this night would not soon be forgotten. As Chef Duval returned to the kitchen, leaving behind a wave of murmurs and speculation, both he and Karoline knew the stakes had changed forever. What started as a quiet disagreement had become a public spectacle, one neither of them could ignore. The moment Chef Antoine Duval stepped away from Karoline Leavitt's table, the ballroom erupted into a flurry of hushed conversations and speculative glances. Guests leaned in toward one another, their eyes darting between the kitchen doors, where Chef Duval had disappeared, and Karoline, who sat perfectly still at her seat. Her calm exterior betrayed nothing, but those seated closest to her noticed the subtle tightening of her grip on her fork. The air was thick with tension as, though everyone collectively held their breath, waiting for what might come next. Reporters and photographers scrambled to capture every detail. Cameras flashed incessantly, capturing Karoline's composed expression and the murmurs of shock rippling through the crowd. Social media lit up almost immediately, with live updates streaming across platforms. Memes, hot takes, and hashtags began trending within minutes. Some praised Chef Duval for his boldness, calling him a defender of artistry and tradition. Others sided with Karoline, accusing the chef of being stubborn and out of touch. The debate spilled into comment sections worldwide, turning a private disagreement into a public spectacle. Karoline's team gathered discreetly near the back of the room, whispering urgently. Her social media strategist showed her a draft response, a carefully worded statement designed to keep the narrative in her favor, without escalating further. But Karoline shook her head, her lips pressed into a thin line. "No," she said firmly. "We're not playing defense. If he wants attention, fine. Let's give him something to talk about." Meanwhile, Chef Duval retreated to the sanctuary of his kitchen, where his staff greeted him with a mix of awe and apprehension. Some clapped quietly, silently celebrating his audacity, while others exchanged worried looks. One sous chef hesitantly approached him, holding a tray of desserts, ready to be served. "Chef, are you sure this is wise? This could blow up in our faces." Chef Duval exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. For the first time that evening, his confidence wavered slightly. He glanced at the clock on the wall, then at the plates lined up for service. "Maybe," he admitted gruffly. "But sometimes you have to stand by your principles even if it costs you." Back in the dining hall, dessert was served, a delicate chocolate mousse adorned with edible gold leaf. As guests sampled the final course, the energy remained charged. Conversations buzzed louder than before, fueled by the dramatic confrontation they had just witnessed. Many couldn't help but admire Chef Duval's gutsy move, seeing it as a rare moment of authenticity in an otherwise polished event. Others questioned whether his actions were appropriate, given the formality of the occasion. Karoline, however, didn't let the drama overshadow her presence. She rose from her seat after finishing her dessert, smoothing her dress as she prepared to mingle with other guests. With a practiced smile, she moved gracefully through the room, shaking hands and posing for photos. To anyone watching, she appeared unfazed, but those who knew her well could see the flicker of determination in her eyes. She wasn't done yet. As the night drew to a close, attendees filed out of the ballroom, buzzing with excitement over what they'd witnessed. Journalists lingered, hoping to snag a quote from either party, but both Chef Duval and Karoline avoided further interaction. The evening ended with more questions than answers. Had Chef Duval gone too far? Was Karoline justified in demanding change? And most importantly, how would this incident shape their futures? What no one realized at the time was that this clash wasn't merely about food or preferences. It was a reflection of deeper societal tensions: tradition versus progress, individuality versus compromise, creativity versus influence. All these Themes played out in real time under the glittering lights of the state dinner. And as the last guest departed and the chandeliers dimmed, one thing was clear. Neither Chef Duval nor Karoline Leavitt would emerge unchanged from this unforgettable night. The morning after the state dinner, the world was ablaze with discussions about Chef Antoine Duval and Karoline Leavitt. News outlets dissected every detail of their public standoff, replaying videos of Chef Duval's bold declaration and analyzing Karoline's cryptic tweet. Social media timelines were flooded with memes, hot takes, and debates, turning what had been a private disagreement into a full-blown cultural moment. It seemed everyone had an opinion. Some hailed Chef Duval as a hero standing up for artistic integrity, while others defended Karoline as a champion of progress and inclusivity. For Chef Duval, the fallout began almost immediately. Event organizers called an emergency meeting to discuss the incident, their voices tinged with concern over potential damage to the venue's reputation. Sponsors who had once praised his culinary genius now questioned whether his actions might alienate future clients. "You didn't just refuse her request," one organizer said pointedly during the meeting. "You made it personal. Do you realize how many people are watching this right now?" Chef Duval listened silently, his arms crossed tightly over his chest. He knew the risks. He'd seen chefs lose partnerships and bookings after similar controversies, but he refused to back down. "If they don't value authenticity, then maybe we're not the right fit," he replied coolly. His team admired his resolve, but couldn't ignore the growing pressure. Orders for upcoming events slowed, and whispers circulated that some high-profile clients were reconsidering working with him. Karoline, on the other hand, navigated the aftermath with calculated precision. She appeared on a popular morning show the next day, smiling warmly as she addressed the controversy without directly mentioning Chef Duval by name. "I believe in respecting tradition," she said smoothly, "but I also believe we have a responsibility to push boundaries when it matters. Whether it's sustainability or equality, these aren't just trends, they're necessities." Her words struck a chord with her supporters, who rallied around her message. Supporters praised her for using her platform to advocate for change, even if it meant facing resistance. Yet, not everyone was convinced. Critics accused her of grandstanding, suggesting that her demands at the dinner were less about principle and more about asserting control. Despite the mixed reactions, one thing was undeniable. Karoline had turned the incident into an opportunity to reinforce her image as a fearless leader, unafraid to challenge the status quo. As the days passed, the story continued to evolve. Prominent food critic published a lengthy article defending Chef Duval's stance, arguing that chefs deserve creative freedom much like artists or musicians. To demand changes to a carefully crafted menu is akin to asking a painter to alter their masterpiece because it doesn't match your living room decor, the critic wrote. The piece resonated deeply within the culinary community, sparking conversations about the balance between customer expectations and artistic expression. Public opinion began to shift subtly. While many still supported Karoline's advocacy for sustainability, others started to see Chef Duval's refusal as a principled stand rather than an act of defiance. Some even argued that his willingness to confront a powerful figure head-on demonstrated courage, a quality often lacking in today's highly curated world. Behind the scenes, both parties grappled with the weight of the situation. Chef Duval spent hours in his kitchen, channeling his frustration into new recipes. Each dish became a testament to his philosophy. Food should tell a story, not bend to external pressures. Meanwhile, Karoline reflected on the incident privately, realizing that while her intentions were noble, perhaps her approach could have been more collaborative. Both emerged from the experience with lessons learned, though neither would admit it publicly. What started as a clash of egos had transformed into something larger, a reflection of broader societal tensions. Tradition versus innovation, individuality versus compromise, influence versus authenticity. All these themes played out under the spotlight, leaving lasting impressions on everyone involved. And though the immediate drama faded, its ripple effects would continue to shape their paths long after the headlines disappeared. The unexpected ally arrived in the form of Eleanor Grayson, a highly respected food critic known for her sharp wit and unapologetic love for culinary authenticity. Eleanor had been following the drama surrounding Chef Antoine Duval and Karoline Leavitt with keen interest, but it wasn't until she attended a small press event days later that she decided to weigh in publicly. Standing before a room of journalists, Eleanor delivered a passionate defense of Chef Duval's actions, framing them as a necessary stand against the growing trend of bending art to fit personal agendas. "Let us be clear," Eleanor began, her voice steady yet commanding. "A chef is not merely a cook. They are storytellers who use flavors, textures, and techniques to convey meaning. When someone demands changes to a carefully curated menu, especially at an event as significant as a state dinner, they aren't just asking for substitutions. They're challenging the very essence of what makes that meal special." Her words resonated deeply, particularly within the culinary world. Chefs across the globe took to social media to share their own experiences of dealing with difficult requests from high-profile guests. Some recounted stories of clients insisting on removing key ingredients or altering dishes beyond recognition, leaving the chefs feeling disrespected and undermined. Others praised Chef Duval for having the courage to draw a line where many would have hesitated. Eleanor's article, published later that week, became a viral sensation. Titled, "The Art of Saying No: Why Chefs Deserve Creative Freedom," it dissected the incident with nuance, acknowledging both sides while firmly siding with Chef Duval. She argued that while dietary preferences and ethical considerations were valid, they shouldn't come at the expense of artistic expression. "If we demand that every dish cater to individual whims, we risk losing the soul of cuisine itself," she wrote. The piece struck a chord with readers, sparking thoughtful discussions about the delicate balance between respecting tradition and embracing change. As public opinion shifted, so did the tone of the conversation. People who had initially criticized Chef Duval began to reconsider their stance, seeing his refusal not as arrogance but as a principled act of self-respect. Even some of Karoline Leavitt's supporters admitted privately that her insistence on altering the centerpiece dish might have crossed a line. While they still admired her commitment to progressive values, they questioned whether this particular battle was worth fighting. For Chef Duval, the tide of support came as both relief and vindication. Messages poured in from fellow chefs, restaurateurs, and even strangers who appreciated his dedication to preserving culinary integrity. Local food bloggers organized a Chef's Choice dinner series, inviting prominent chefs to present their most personal creations without interference from attendees. Chef Duval was asked to headline the first event, an honor he accepted with quiet gratitude. Karoline, meanwhile, found herself navigating a more complex landscape. Though her core message about sustainability and inclusivity remained popular, the optics of the situation had changed. Critics seized on the narrative that she had overstepped, turning what could have been a collaborative effort into a public confrontation. Her team urged her to pivot, suggesting she use the opportunity to highlight shared values rather than divisions. In response, Karoline announced a new initiative aimed at promoting plant-based dining options in high-profile events. But this time, she emphasized partnership over demands. What surprised everyone was how the controversy brought unlikely allies together. Eleanor Grayson reached out to Chef Duval personally, offering to profile him in an upcoming documentary about visionary chefs. During their conversations, she encouraged him to see the incident not as a failure, but as a chance to amplify his philosophy. For the first time since the dinner, Chef Duval allowed himself to feel hopeful, realizing that his actions had sparked meaningful dialogue. Even Karoline, despite the criticism, emerged with a renewed sense of purpose. She began hosting roundtable discussions with chefs and activists, seeking common ground on issues like sustainability and accessibility. Though she and Chef Duval never crossed paths again, their shared experience underscored a universal truth. Growth often comes from discomfort, and sometimes the most impactful lessons arise from conflict. As the weeks turned into months, the initial fervor died down, replaced by quieter reflections. What had started as a clash of personalities evolved into a broader conversation about creativity, compromise, and the power dynamics between creators and influencers. Both Chef Duval and Karoline walked away changed, not enemies, but individuals, shaped by the same unforgettable moment. Weeks turned into months, and the once fiery controversy surrounding Chef Antoine Duval and Karoline Leavitt gradually faded from the headlines. Yet its impact lingered, shaping both their lives in ways neither could have anticipated. The incident wasn't just a fleeting moment of drama. It became a defining chapter that forced them to reflect on their values, priorities, and how they interacted with the world. For Chef Duval, the aftermath brought challenges but also unexpected opportunities. While some clients remained hesitant to work with him, fearing his fiery reputation, others sought him out specifically because of it. His name became synonymous with integrity, attracting diners who appreciated his unwavering commitment to authenticity. Restaurants began approaching him to consult on projects, knowing his involvement would add credibility to their brands. He even launched a small cooking series online, where he shared not only recipes but also stories behind each dish, emphasizing the importance of respecting culinary traditions while innovating thoughtfully. Yet, the experience left its mark on him. Chef Duval grew more reflective, realizing that standing firm didn't always mean shutting others out. In interviews, he acknowledged that collaboration wasn't weakness, it was another form of strength. "I still believe in protecting my vision," he said during one episode of his show. "But I've learned that listening doesn't mean giving up your principles, it means finding common ground." Karoline Leavitt, too, emerged from the incident, transformed. Though her advocacy for sustainability and inclusivity remained steadfast, she adopted a more measured approach when engaging with industries outside her expertise. She realized that pushing for change required not just conviction, but also empathy, a lesson reinforced by the backlash she faced after the dinner. Instead of making demands, she started fostering partnerships, working closely with chefs and event planners to create menus that balanced tradition with innovation. Her efforts earned praise from critics and allies alike, proving that leadership often lies in finding solutions rather than stoking conflicts. The two never crossed paths again, but their lives continued to intersect indirectly. A year after the state dinner, Karoline attended a charity gala featuring a menu curated by Chef Duval, though neither knew the other was involved until afterward. Guests raved about the meal, particularly a vegan dessert inspired by classic French techniques. When Karoline complimented the chef through an intermediary, Chef Duval simply smiled, saying, "Tell her I'm glad she enjoyed it." It was a small gesture, yet it hinted at a quiet mutual respect forged through adversity. Beyond their individual journeys, the incident sparked broader conversations about the intersections of art, politics, and public life. Chefs around the world began speaking openly about the pressures they face to accommodate high-profile guests, prompting industry leaders to advocate for clearer boundaries. Meanwhile, politicians and influencers like Karoline took note, recognizing the importance of understanding and respecting the creative processes of those they worked with. In the end, what had seemed like a clash of egos revealed itself to be something far deeper, a testament to growth. Both Chef Duval and Karoline learned valuable lessons about compromise, communication, and the power of humility. They showed the world that disagreements, no matter how heated, can lead to progress if approached with openness and reflection, and so, the story of the state dinner became more than just gossip or spectacle. It became a reminder of the complexities of human interaction. In a time when division often overshadowed dialogue, their journey offered hope, that even in moments of conflict there is room for understanding, growth, and ultimately, transformation.